Desjardins, your host for the Silver Lyming. And the reason that I've created this podcast is I really want to have a platform that I can share more information with you about Lyme and tick-borne illness, and more importantly, about survivors and people who have healed themselves and some of the different ways that they've gone about doing that, because I find that was some of the most useful information to me when I was sick, was to hear stories about other people getting better, because it just inspired me. It gave me hope, and it let me understand that it is possible to heal. Today, I have with me a really wonderful guest that I've met on TikTok. This is my first guest that I'm bringing forth from TikTok. And I'm just really excited because in the brief conversations that I've had with her, and like I've learned so much just watching her videos, but in the brief conversation I have with her, I have so many things that I want to look into and just new streams of information and ways to incorporate additional support and healing to my body. And it's just great because in this space, really, there is no limit as to how much we can learn about healing. And it's just fun and fascinating to me because we can just constantly be evolving and changing. And technically speaking, from an Ayurvedic perspective as well, you would want to be evolving and changing over time. We're going through different phases in life. We're in different stages. Our body needs different support at different times. And when we're faced with something like Lyme disease and tick-borne illness, that's one moment in time in particular where it's hugely important to focus on different ways that we can heal our body. Because I learned through my own experience that Western medicine has its place, but it's not the end all be all for everything. And when it comes to something like this that infiltrates your system from every angle, you really need to hit it from every angle to get it out. It takes acts of God to heal sometimes. And again, it's very possible, but without learning different ways to do that, we're kind of trapped and we're at the mercy of just the one way. So people like Melissa, who again, I met on TikTok, and you should check her out. She's on a lot of different social medias. I will put all of her links in the show notes, but you should check out what she's got going on today. She's going to talk a lot about her story, of course, but some different things. And she's a wellness advocate and a healer. She offers vital perspective for those seeking answers beyond traditional medicine. She's got a master's degree in acupuncture, background in education. She just made it her life work to help people understand the why behind symptoms. And that's what I'm kind of getting at too. It's like, we really need to understand the root about what's going on, or like people's true nature and constitution, for them to help heal their body specific to them. But Melissa, she'll get more into this, but in her 40s, she battled a lot of persistent health issues. And then she went through seeing 12 doctors. That's not abnormal either in the Lyme space, before figuring out that she had Lyme going on. She had a lengthy detox protocol that ultimately helped her to heal and get full recovery, but she'll talk a lot about that today too. And so right now, she collaborates with people nationwide, so you can reach out to her again on any of the social media channels, I'm sure through her website, and she will help to offer access to functional lab testing, and then she can help you develop a solid protocol specific to you for healing. She's the founder of Gut Reset 123, and that's a 12-week program that offers precision functional gut testing and personalized protocols to help to take you from constipation to liberation. And as I know from healing, again, opening the detox pathways is one of the best ways that we can serve ourselves. But I'm going to let Melissa get more into that. Melissa Klepacki, thank you very much for joining us. I'm really grateful to have you here today. I'm really excited about this. And again, it's just really exciting for me to spend some more time with you, because you've got so much knowledge, and your energy also lends very well to delivering it in a very wonderful, absorbable fashion. So thank you for being here with me today. I'm really, again, encouraged by you and inspired. So if you don't mind, if you could just share with us a little bit more. I know I gave a pretty good synopsis, but if you would share more specifically about how you became involved in the space of Lyme and tick-borne illness, maybe a little bit about what was happening to you that led you into ultimately coming to the diagnosis, please.
Thanks, Anne. I'm so honored to be here. Sharing my story is part of everyone's healing. I think we all learn so much from hearing about other people's healing journeys. And I'll just give you a brief synopsis of my saga, but I was in my late 30s and I woke up one morning. It was a Saturday morning in May, and my hand was numb. And I thought, oh, I maybe slept on my neck wrong. I wasn't quite sure. But by early afternoon, I said to my husband, I'm not feeling so well. I started to feel a little fluish. I laid down and I thought, is that my leg going numb? My same side of my body. Called the doctor's office. By the time I got in there in afternoon, my entire left side of my body was numb. I went to the ER, was there for 3 days, had every study under the sun. The only thing that came back with any abnormality was my white blood cell count was low, but they'd had no idea why. It stayed that way for 15 years. That was 2009. I had that numbness for about a week. I was followed by a neurologist for 6 months, ruling out multiple sclerosis. I had some headaches. I had a week of really bad fatigue, sort of a 3-week period from the numbness until I woke up one morning and I was better. Oh, that was weird. Maybe that was viral. I didn't know. I'm an acupuncturist by training. Root cause medicine is my jam. And just kind of brushed it under the carpet. That was May. Later on in the summer, I started with weird GI problems. I had pain in my stomach, little pin pocket points would be really tender to the touch, some digestive issues, but just very vague. And again, feeling of malaise, just very tired, not myself. That's when I started seeing the 12 doctors. That's when I made a plan 2 years later, when I still wasn't better, to go to the Mayo Clinic, because I figured they're the best at what they do. They should be able. It was billed as, come to our clinic. You'll have all these practitioners with all of these different specialties figuring out what's wrong with you. It was not that case. It was an absolute disaster. My case was mismanaged. I sent them 12 pages of paperwork. Like, I had written 12 pages of my history. And my first appointment, I sat down with the doctor and she said, "So what brings you to Mayo Clinic?" And I thought, are you kidding? Did you not read the hell that I've been through? So in the course of that, I was investigated for cancer. I had a bone marrow biopsy. I had plummeting levels of iron and ferritin and had iron infusions. My white blood cell count was always low. We couldn't figure out why. Finally visited with a functional doctor who did some extensive testing, and it was found that my mercury levels were off the charts. And I thought, there we go. That's the root cause, heavy metals, bogging down my body. But after a year of working on bringing all my heavy metal levels down, I still didn't feel well. And thanks to this doctor, who is now one of my best friends, she was on a chat board with some people in functional medicine saying, I have this really tough case and we can't seem to crack it, and blah, 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 blah. And someone said, that sounds just like Lyme disease. And you need to run a test at a specific lab in California called IGeneX. This was back in 2014, 10 years ago. And sure enough, I had Lyme disease. Upon seeing a specialist, I learned I had Babesia, Bartonella, and Rocky Mountain spotted fever, right? All which we know need to be treated with different antibiotics or herbs. I was seeing a Western doctor. We were treating with antibiotics. I started with a PICC line. I wound up with a massive blood clot that needed emergency surgery. It's been a journey, right? It's been a journey. So it took me so long to get diagnosed. And then once I got diagnosed, I actually got sicker. And I was on so many antibiotics for all of these different infections that I had, and my gut was a disaster. So not only was I fatigued and all of the symptoms, right? We know Lyme disease can affect every part of the body, and I think it pretty much affected every part of my body. But the aftermath with the gut fallout was one of my biggest issues that continued to persist after I got off the antibiotics and sought other methods of treatment. So that said, I did heal in progressive stages. And that's something I think that's really important for all of us with Lyme disease and co-infections to understand, is there is no magic bullet. There is nothing that is going to save you quickly. This disease is progressive. Lyme disease does not live in your blood. It lives in your tissues. It's hard to reach and treat. When our bodies are depleted, Lyme disease flares. We know in times of stress and depletion, essentially. The other part, so I had gotten progressively better. I've had a couple of flares in the last 10 years. My house burned down in 2016, 2017, I was sick, right? Go figure. That's how the body works. It catches up with you. However, I found a really amazing company called Cellcore Biosciences a couple of years ago. And they do a pretty systemic detox protocol. And what I learned was that even though I had treated the Lyme and the co-infections, I still had Lyme disease living in those parasites. Those parasites that were in my intestines were housing Lyme. And every time one died or was spooked and sort of barfed up the contents of its belly back into my system was dealing with Lyme disease again and again. After studying with Cellcore, I learned that I also had mold exposure. I had some toxic mold levels that were higher than I would have liked. So when I was able to bring down the mold levels and take care of the parasites, and that was probably 2020, I have felt well ever since. I have, and a different level of wellness. I feel lighter, I feel cleaner. I don't have any fatigue. I play 3-hour paddle matches. I'm a competitive tennis player, a gardener. I have 2 teenage boys that I run around with and 3 dogs. Like, I am a very active person. I got my life back because I was laying in bed for days at a time. I remember crying at 2:00, knowing that the bus was coming at 2:30. And I didn't know how I was going to get off the couch and walk down the driveway. I mean, that is, like, I want to cry myself thinking about that person that I was, because that's not a life. Healing is possible, but it doesn't happen overnight, and it happens in stages. And it happens, I think, yes, I did some healing with those antibiotics, as destructive as they could have been to my gut long term. I think every step along the way, the Cellcore was a huge jump for me. I've tried biomagnetism, which I'm a huge fan of. Dr. Luis Garcia is an inventor of this amazing protocol called biomagnetism. I see him every 4 months still. I think that was leveling up for me. There is a frequency healing device. If you're watching, I'm holding up my frequency device, which looks like an Apple Watch, and it's called the Nikki Watch. And it's a tremendous piece of technology. I learned about them about 15 or 16 months ago. I still test positive for Lyme disease at the right lab. I am IgM, and when you are tested for Lyme disease, you look at IgG bands and IgM bands. For anybody who's not familiar, the easiest way to remember it is IgM means I have it this minute, and IgG is an infection that's gone. So I still continue to test IgM positive for Lyme disease, which is, doctors shake their heads and say, no, no, no. And then I show them the test results. So I went to a doctor for a different health issue. And she said, oh, well, don't you know about wave 1 and frequency healing? And I know about frequency healing a little bit. I listened to frequencies, et cetera. And so she told me about this company. It's a Canadian company called Free Medica. You're welcome to look them up. And at the time, I wish I had it with me, they made a device last year called the Wave 1, and it's about this big. It's about the size of a big pack of playing cards, a jumbo playing card pack. And I would wear it on my leg at night, and it starts out very slowly with a minute of frequencies for Lyme and co-infections, a minute of detox frequencies, and then 30 minutes of stress and anxiety. And you go through a 30-day cycle where they bump it up a little at a time. So I started this 15 months ago. I was Lyme disease symptom free. I was feeling great. And my doctor was like, you still need to deal with this infection. I herxed so bad from the wave 1 that I was blown away. I was like, it's this, I mean, if you can see, it emits a light. It's a tiny light. You probably can't see it in this camera.
Kind of, yeah.
Kind of. It's this tiny red light.
Yep.
And how could that possibly make me herx? But I did, and I called the company. I was like 2 weeks in, and she said, you need to take a week off, reset your device, and start at the beginning again. And so I did, and I've been using it every day ever since and feel great. Okay. I have not retested myself, but I assume it's working because I feel great and it's keeping me well. And then they came out with the Nikki Watch. So instead of that big obtrusive device that I wear at night because it's clunky, now the frequencies are put into a watch. So they make 2 versions. They make a standard version and they make a Lyme version. The Lyme version has some tremendous frequencies to kill Lyme disease and co-infections, also to handle problems with gut health, which I'm a huge fan of. And I I can't say I completely understand how frequency medicine works, but I can tell you, in the same way that I don't understand biomagnetism, but when I do these things and I feel a shift, I wear this watch every day, right? And it has different settings for nighttime, for stress, for energy levels, for allergies, for if you're traveling, it has a travel setting that helps to just calm you as you make your way in the world. I'm a big fan of the Nikki watch. And so I think that, you had said earlier when you were introducing me that we need to be hitting Lyme from every angle.
Yes.
Yes, right. So not just from a physical angle, not just from a physical angle of killing, but from a physical angle of supporting, not just from a physical angle, but a mental angle. And then not even mental, but frequency healing, which is just, you don't even know it's happening, right? It's not even in your mentality, but it is healing. It is a different angle of healing.
Yes.
So I think everything that we're trying in this Lyme world has its place. And I think it's our jobs, as you said before, we're all biochemically independent and individual. And what works for you will probably not work for me. It's the same thing when we talk about gut health. Like our microbiomes are so diverse that how things affect one person is completely different. So that's basically my healing journey. And I practiced acupuncture for a long time. I still love acupuncture, but I think we live in too toxic a world for needles to get the job done. I think there's a time and a place for sure. And I still see an acupuncturist. I love the modality, but I think people need more. And I think the answer for a lot of us is detox, is really lifting that. I like to think about like this layer of sludge that we have, that if we don't get rid of that, and mold is in there. If you can't get rid of mold and you've got mold in your system, you're not going to be able to hit Lyme. Yeah. Mold and parasites have to go first. And so many of us have toxic exposures, whether it's church or school or our cars or our home or our grandparents' house that we sleep over on the weekends that had that leak in the basement. We really need to be considering what our toxic exposures are, especially when we have Lyme disease and we're already burdened.
Yes. Well, you made me really think about something too when you were talking about parasites and they actually ingest the Lyme and they hold the Lyme and then like I never really thought about that before, but yeah. And it is, I mean, it is, I've talked about this with other people too. It's like so many layers, right? And I see it as layers of static around people, and you've really just got to like pull one layer away at a time, and you can eventually get to the root and like completely soothe the system. But if you're really trying to heal Lyme, yes, you definitely need to alleviate some toxicities. Many times people have mold on board. They have no idea about that. So I'm glad, again, that we're hitting that topic, because people will try desperately to fix themselves and you can just continue to bang your head against the wall. But if you don't figure out about those other things, like you're really not going to progress. Or you maybe can, but what I'm picturing is that, what is it, Oedipus, who's like continuing to roll the boulder up the hill and he just keeps rolling back down on him. Like that's basically what you're going to be doing. And so it'll be
order matters, right? Order matters. And as you just described, in the Lyme world, we really talk about the peeling of the onion.
Yeah.
Right, when we treat disease. So when we look at the outside of the onion, it's all we can see. That onion could be rotten to the core, but you just see that shiny outer layer. And so you go, okay, what is it going to take to remove that layer? So for me, when I was first diagnosed with Lyme disease, it wasn't until 2 years later that I found out that Rocky Mountain spotted fever was an issue. And that was uncovered because as the layers peeled off, there it was. What was the next thing that was blocking my healing? And I did some energetic testing with a Lyme doctor. They found Rocky Mountain spotted fever. I said, I don't really think any of those symptoms on that sheet are different than really what I'm feeling, but okay, if you say I have it. And we decided to treat with homeopathy that infection. And we used products by a company called Des Bio, which if anyone's looking for a super gentle way, if everything makes you herx and you're one of those super sensitive individuals, I like to use homeopathy with those clients. And they make a kit called the SSR kit, which is these levels of homeopathy that go up and then back down and try to stimulate immune response. I took my first dose, noticed nothing. My second dose, I broke out in a head to toe Rocky Mountain spotted fever rash, like insane. And then as quick as it was there, maybe 8 hours later, it was gone. And I finished the rest of the kit and retested it, and I didn't have it.
Huh.
That was I've had a couple of really crazy healing responses. That was one that was shocking to me because it was
Yeah.
just like, it was like a ton of bricks. I had a bad rash and then it was gone. Felt a little crappy. And then it worked its way out of my system. That's homeopathy can do beautiful things like that.
Yes. I've had some wild experiences like that. And it's just amazing how the body can release when it's ready or when you're guided it to the space that it can do that easily and get rid of things more easily. And I feel like I talked to you about that too. And just how when you prep the body, it's amazing how much it'll just pass on its own. Like when
Yeah,
you're in
let's
that.
talk about that. Let's
Yeah.
talk about that because that really is the first part of healing anybody of anything is opening drainage pathways.
Yeah.
So imagine that. And the only real way we're getting the major toxins out of our body is pooping.
Yeah.
That's it. We can sweat, we can breathe, we can pee, all great ways, but poop is really where it's happening. That's especially all those toxins coming from your liver. Now imagine that you're not pooping well, which is not every day. All my clients need to poop at least once a day, most poop twice a day by the time we're finished our work.
Yes.
But if you're not pooping every day and you are trying to kill things, you are putting in toxic substances that are going to kill things. And when things die, they like to release toxic substances, right? So if that is sitting in your intestine and not being moved out every day, you will get sicker. You will feel horrible.
Yes.
So if you are listening out there and you are on antibiotics or you're a new Lyme patient or you're a struggling Lyme patient and you're not pooping well and you're trying to kill things, you can't, that's the wrong way to go about it. You need to focus on the gut health and on moving your bowels at least once a day, preferably doing a little bit of detox work before you think about killing anything. In Cellcore, we don't even think about killing things for the first 4 months. We are nurturing the system. We are remineralizing, re-energizing, and opening drainage pathways.
Yes, which is hugely important. And like again, if people don't poop normally, how are you going to get anything out of your body?
Right.
And it's so important to do that. And so I know from an Ayurvedic perspective, we say like the first thing that you need to be doing is pooping the first thing in the morning, 18 inches. And like if your body's not, then you're not really going to be feeling that good. And so it's really incredibly important for you to do that for your body. And so again, if there's help for people in this, like that's one thing is just getting your body more into a regular state. But when you're too toxic to do that, like it's next to impossible to really find regularity that way and to be able to make your body respect you and work with you in that space. And so people like you are very useful at helping people to understand different ways to open those pathways to be able to go ahead and do that with the body and eliminate again. And so I love what you're talking about and just thinking about like, I feel like you kind of touched on it, but like, were there specific moments that you knew that you were going to get better? Like because again, you were going from doctor to doctor and then like I guess maybe a better way to put it was like, was it possible for healing to not be an option for you?
No. Oh no. Healing was always an option for me, even in the darkest moments when I cried on the bathroom floor and talked to God. I was frustrated because the healing wasn't happening. And I knew that healing was my birthright. I knew that this body wanted to heal. I didn't understand what I was doing wrong when I was trying everything, right? Because we try everything and we're told it's in your head, you're crazy, you need an antidepressant, just get more sleep, maybe a little exercise. Oh, you're a mom. You're tired. I was told that. You're a mom. You have 2 young boys. You're probably exhausted. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, healing is possible. You know, one of the a really informative doctor's appointments that I had. I live in New Jersey, and a local doctor said to me, you know, I send my toughest cases to this guy at NYU. He's kind of like a Dr. House. And I was like all for it, right? Heal me, tell me what's wrong with me. So I went into New York City, which is when you're not feeling well, is a huge journey. Made an appointment, sat down with this guy, and after an hour, he said to me, you know, I don't know, I have no idea what's wrong with you, but I can promise you this: you're healthier now than when you get your diagnosis, because then they're just going to start throwing stuff at you. And I thought, shit, right? Like, this is a guy at the top of his game. Number one, telling me he has no idea what's wrong with me, and number two, that I'm better off now. And sure enough, right, I just got sicker when I started all those antibiotics. But so I felt like when he told me that, it did shift my thinking a little bit, because I was so desperate for a diagnosis. You know, we all need to name it. What was the enemy? What was taking me down? I knew it wasn't in my head, but it really was helpful to put a name to it. However, I think a lot of Lyme people tend to really relate to their diagnosis. So I never considered myself a Lyme patient. I always sort of, I don't know. I think a lot of people really hold on to their diagnoses, and um, it gives you a way to, I don't want this to sound bad, but it becomes an excuse.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I never wanted to associate with that. I was always in the healing mode. So that was pretty informative in my healing journey. And then when I finally met my functional medicine doctor, who spent 2 hours with me, and at the end of my appointment gave me a giant hug, and she said, "You're going to heal." I
That's
cried.
awesome.
You know, that was what I needed more than anything else, was someone who believed in me, because I knew I could do it. I just didn't know how. You know, I was desperate, and this little body was trying. And so that was really just having someone believe in me and remind me that healing was possible, made a huge difference.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're really making me think about something else too, and that maybe like I was desperate for a diagnosis too, just because it felt like grasping at straws when you're not really sure what's wrong with your body and you keep getting told it's stress or it's this or it's because you're a mom, it's normal, you're supposed to feel like this. And it's like, oh, I don't know about this. And I got a diagnosis and I was like, oh, whew, okay, great. Like I at least know what's wrong with me. But my dad would remind me, he's like, you're not your diagnosis. Like that's not you're not your identity, right? Like you're not Lyme disease, you're Anne. You know, you're just dealing with this for a temporary moment. And so I can appreciate like having to keep distance from self too with that relationship. But like maybe maybe you don't really even need the diagnosis, right? And maybe it's just a matter of starting to treat self differently on all levels and to give more nutrition and support through food or through what we take in emotionally or intellectually. Or and if we are able to peel back the layers of the onion on our own without even really getting a diagnosis, we could get to ultimate health. And like I try to decide what makes people have Lyme disease in the first place. Like not everybody gets it, right? Like some people are bitten and they don't have any symptoms. Maybe it was not an infected tick, or some people have Lyme in their system but don't exhibit any systems or symptoms. Is that because maybe certain people are just so toxic ahead that
I think what happens, Anne, is when you get bitten by a tick, right? It lives in your bloodstream. The bacteria lives in your bloodstream for a short period of time, causes those flu-like symptoms, potentially the bullseye rash, not for everybody, not for most actually. And that is when antibiotics can go in and kill, because it's in your bloodstream. However, for a lot of people, their immune system sees it and goes, gone. if your immune system's nice and hardy and you're not dealing with too many other toxins and too much overload that's sitting on top of your immune system weighing you down. For some people, it'll get into their system and it'll hide. There's tons of people who were bitten as teenagers that have no Lyme disease symptoms until a car crash, a divorce, the birth of a kid, right? Something that really jostles the system. We see it then. And I think the same way with these chronic Lyme cases, mine included, that I still continue to test positive. I still have the bacteria in my system. I'm just dealing with it well. I've just managed my life around it. And I think a lot of diseases, cancer, multiple sclerosis, I'm seeing tons of people live full, healthy, happy lives by taking care of their foundational health, right? Lowering their stress, actually eating food. Most of what we're eating in this country is food product. It's not food. If it has ingredients, it's not food.
Yeah.
End of story. So, and we're too stressed and we're not sleeping well. Our priorities are all out of whack. And when we are healing, that's the first thing that needs to come back into line. Are all those foundational health practices. We need to treat ourselves like a 3-year-old child. We need to put ourselves down for a nap. We need to eat nourishing food. We need outside time and play. All of that. We need to give ourselves that grace.
I love that analogy. I was sitting next to a lady the other day and we were getting pedicures and she's like, I don't really do this. I'm a farmer. I'm always in the dirt. And I looked at her and I was like, yeah, and I bet you're healthy as a horse, right? And she's kind of chuckling, but she was 75. I never would have guessed she was that old. Like, she looked fantastic. She was in great shape. She had just life forced through her whole being. And I was just kind of laughing about it because she's just, she's taking care of herself. She's doing the foundational stuff. She's living more by alignment of the sun and living in accordance with the growing season and whatnot. Like, it's just, there's so much proof and wisdom in a sense to be more into that path of life and just how much more optimal health she has. And she has no health issues, right? Like other 75-year-olds are on like 50 prescriptions and going to 50,000 doctor's appointments and doing this and that. And it's kind of sad. And I think also partially like just the way our society is structured, we have our worker bees and you sit in front of a computer all day or do whatnot, and you're kind of sedentary and you just sort of get into this like gradual degradation of being human. Like when we're little and 3 years old or whatnot, we're out playing and having fun and freedom, and then grown-up responsibilities kind of saddle us and weigh us down, and people make some bad choices financially or whatnot, and then like they have to keep working and they have to do this, and it just depletes their source of vitality, and all of these diseases then can set in because they're not at ease within self too, right? Like
the other problem is too, if you think about it, you go to the doctor as a middle-aged, I'm 50, I'll be 54, right? So all of my peers are being offered cholesterol medicine and statins, but they're never being offered foundational health guidance. The doctor doesn't say, let's sit down and talk about your diet because your triglycerides are through the roof. Like, what are you eating? What are you doing? What's your movement like? Are you sleeping? What's your stress level?
Yes.
They just hand you a prescription. So then you become powerless. Oh, I don't know. I just take a statin.
Correct.
That's not living. That's not taking responsibility for your health.
Correct. And it's not even, I kind of sort of see it too. Like then they have this, like also this sense of invincibility or freedom that they can just go ahead and eat whatever they want because they're on this statin. So they don't have this problem any longer. And it's like, oh my goodness, no. Or I've seen where people don't qualify for bariatric surgery and they're advised to eat more food to gain more weight so they can qualify. Like it's appalling. Like this is just so backwards and wrong. Like why don't we correct, but people are in the middle and it's sad because you lose a quality of life. Like I can't even imagine being my stomach like you can only eat this much food a day for the rest of your life. Like who wants to do that? And that would be so impossible because that's another one thing I think about from an addiction standpoint is with food. Like we need it to live. And so you are faced with it every day. And so
listen to this interesting thing that I heard the other day. I'm going to share it with you. I haven't shared it with anyone yet, but underneath our teeth are all kinds of energetic meridian pathways.
Uh-huh.
So when we are chewing, we are stimulating all those pathways.
Huh.
If you are eating a processed food diet or drinking a lot of shakes or have bariatric surgery and aren't eating, you're not chewing, therefore you're not stimulating.
Fascinating.
That's what I said. I was
Huh.
like, wow, the body is amazing, right? It is set up and hardwired to heal.
That's right.
We have to get out of its way.
That's
We
right.
have to give it those things. If you're driving a race car and you put peanut oil in the gas tank, good luck. So if you want to operate your body and put seed oils in there, which is the bane of what's happening with everyone out there who's gaining weight, if you're listening and you're eating processed foods, anything in a bag or a box, anything frozen, anything with an ingredient label, almost always has seed oils. Those are man-made oils that our bodies do not know what to do with. And that's why we're seeing so much metabolic dysfunction.
Mm, yes.
Because we're not eating food. Start there, people. Breathe some fresh air, get into the sun, eat real food. If you're having problems with constipation, I have a great recipe called Good Poop Vegetable Soup. It's got tons of phytochemicals and polyphenols, what we need to be feeding our gut. And it can be made, if you live in a food desert and you only have access to canned vegetables, you can still make it. If you live on a farm and everything is fresh, go for it. If you want to make it vegan, yay. If you want to put bone broth in it and make it hearty, okay. Super modifiable, but it's going to give you the good fiber that you need. It's a great place to start. A cup of vegetable soup every day, if you have a crappy diet right now, will do you a world of good.
Yes. Yes. And I was listening to something else today that was talking about 1% change in 10 areas of our life equals a 10% change overall, right? And so just by adding a little vegetable soup or spending a little bit more time with self-care or even 5 minutes a day meditating or sitting in the sun for 5 minutes or just going for a quick walk around the block, whatever it is, like just 1% calibration in 10 spaces of your life gives you a 10% overall change and begins to help you on that pathway more towards recovery. And so I love that you're thinking about just even like 1 cup of vegetable soup a day, people. Like it's not that hard, to
Yeah.
begin to help the body to heal. And I think about too, like I I don't know if I agree tremendously that the body is designed to heal, but I also think the body was designed to be healthy. The body was made to be healthy and abundant. And I guess that ties into like healing, but we aren't meant to be sick in the first place. And so we really have to look at, again, why are we getting sick in the first place? Because the body isn't supposed to be like that. We're supposed to be in abundant health and in optimal state of receiving and joy and abundance. God didn't make us to be sick and miserable. I do believe that tremendously, but we have huge power in the ability of what we can do if we find ourselves at that bottom of the barrel. Because not everybody gets sick, not everybody goes through that in life, and that is also encouraging and inspiring. It's like, oh, some people don't even have to think about stuff like this. Like for whatever reason, they're kind of in a bubble and they just go and it's good. But for some of us, it's not quite like that, and we find ourselves kind of at the bottom of the barrel, and then you kind of just have to reshape yourself and figure out different ways to pick yourself up. And I I appreciate you too because I feel like you've got a very broad spectrum of knowledge. And I think that's really important in this fight too. It's like there is not one tried and true methodology for people to heal. And so it's critical for people like you. And I am also, I feel in this section is like you learn a lot of different healing modalities, a lot of different ways to heal the body. And then you can begin to shape and apply specific things for specific people with the specific issue, right? Like it's a much more refined precision when you have such a broad base that you can draw from, but also tried true living experience, right? Like not everyone is going to fix themselves the same way. And so what you did for yourself, I would say that there's general things like getting your detox pathways open, like having a good foundation in place, like having good nutrition that are good for everyone, but it's just what that looks like for each person that's going to be different. And when it comes to healing too, I'm not sure if you can weigh in on this, but like because there are so many different ways, I think for people, it's good to get exposed to different stories like this, to hear about some of the different ways. And then if something resonates or sticks with you or keeps coming back up in your head, like, oh, maybe I should really look into this Nikki watch, or oh, maybe I should really check into the Des Bio homeopathy things. And that's something that's like keep calling in the back of your head again. Like that might be your specific path, right? Like that's the one that's your body's letting you know that's the way to do this for you. And at least for me, like I would hear about a lot of different healing things and like some of it just falls off and I don't even remember it. And then other things, again, it's like my soul was like clinging to that thought and was like, go, you
Yes.
need to work on this. Do you find that happens a lot for your clients? Like, or do you have experience of this specifically? Did that happen to you?
I do. I muscle test.
Mm,
Right. So I muscle test myself and my clients, which can be really helpful when choosing modalities. But absolutely, I believe there are no coincidences. So when we are paying attention and walking through life with eyes open, we will see what we need to see. I believe we're guided by a higher power, whatever you want to call it, that helps to guide us. Those things aren't coming by coincidence. You're not listening today to this podcast by a coincidence. There's something that drew you here. There's a message here for you and something that one of us said, and you'll go explore it. Maybe you'll get off this and you'll Google something, or you'll call someone, or you'll be inspired to look up something.
yes.
Um, and I love that a lot of these modalities, the biomagnetism, non-invasive,
Hmm.
can't hurt you. Homeopathy, it either works or it doesn't. It's inert substances, essentially, right? Either it works or it doesn't. Not going to hurt you. When we get into herbs, can hurt you a lot. Herbs are very powerful. Remember that all medications come from herbs. So on the scale, make yourself a continuum and say to yourself, should I try Reiki? Someone putting their hands on me for a half an hour? Can it hurt me? No. Can it help me? Possibly. That's something I'm willing to try. Acupuncture with needles? No, thank you. I'm afraid of needles. Mark it off your list. Keep moving. There are so many ways to heal this disease. And again, as you said in the beginning, we need to attack it. And I hate the word attack, but we need to approach it from every angle. And we need to have a lot of grace and love for ourselves through this process, because it is draining on every level. It impacts our relationships. It impacts our self-worth. It really does a number on you. I
Yes.
mean, I wouldn't be the same person I am today had I not gone through my experience. And the other thing, and I'll say something about that in a second, but the other thing I wanted to touch on was the idea that you just touched on about community and healing tribes and the idea of illness isolation. If you are listening to this and you are newly diagnosed and maybe you're bedridden or you're not getting out of the house much, please find a healing tribe. I love Facebook. That's how I got through my early days, joining different groups. I was on an MS board for a while when I thought it was MS. And then I eventually migrated to the Lyme disease boards. And while there, you have to weed it out, because a lot of people have a lot of opinions that, again, will not be something that you're interested in. But if you are looking for support, it's a wonderful way, because illness isolation, I think, is almost as deadly as some of these diseases can be, when we feel really alone. But had I not gone through it, I stepped away from medicine for a while. There's so many things in life that I love, and I love learning, and I love starting new things. I started a bunch of companies in between, when I kind of stopped practicing acupuncture and when I got back into healing, without needles, essentially. And I would not have gotten back into medicine had it not been for my own journey, had it not been for the love and care I had received and sort of the pass it on mentality. And just watching so many people out there struggle undiagnosed. When I can read it, I know it's tick-borne disease. Like, I want to scream through the screen sometimes when I watch people and say, like, get tested, call me, I'll test you. Like, we can fix this.
Yes.
Because with Lyme disease, unfortunately, I think you need to know the diagnosis, because you need the right herbs, right?
Yes.
You need the right
Yes.
herbs for Bartonella or Babesia or Rocky Mountain or Ehrlichia or Anaplasma or one of the dozen plus diseases that those little ticks are giving us.
Yes. Yes.
So,
And um I'm glad that you just kind of rattled off a couple more of the co-infections too, because for people, like, testing is half the battle, and we didn't really talk too much about this, but the standard testing alone, as a reminder to people, is, your two-tier testing, the ELISA and the Western blot. A lot of times it's not reliable. It's 50 to 65% accurate at best. So you had mentioned earlier IGeneX. That is probably one of the top recommended places for people to send away for proper testing or more sensitive testing or accurate testing. And that's IGENEX.com is their website if you're interested to look at that. But you'd want to get tested for the full spectrum. And sometimes that's the hard part, is to explain to people. I can see it too a lot of times. Like, I'm like, oh God, I know this is tick-borne illness. And it's like, okay, some people are like, well, I was already tested, or I don't know if it's fear, like they don't want anything to do with it, or sometimes people are a little apprehensive about it, but do know people that it can manifest in so many ways. It's not just a physical manifestation. It can be psychological. It can definitely be more of a brain infection than anything, and manifests that way. And in children, a lot of times their IQ drops drastically by numerous points if they're infected. So again, just keep in mind that it isn't just a physical manifestation sometimes, and you're not always going to get the bullseye rash. 35%
Bartonella rage is a big one in kids. So
Pardon?
both of my sons have had Lyme disease.
Okay.
I now have a 16-year-old and an 18-year-old. When my 16-year-old was about 8, he had an acute Lyme disease infection. It was just Lyme disease. It was handled with antibiotics, and he sailed through it. I have an 18-year-old who was sick for a year, undiagnosed, refused blood testing because he hates blood testing. And he was like, I'm not getting tested. I was like, I really think you need to get tested. Turns out he had Lyme and Bartonella rage was a big part of it. Bartonella really kind of affect mental, emotional. In fact, I read a really interesting study talking about the unhomed or the homeless in San Francisco and having a huge rate of Bartonella from head lice. And that's causing a lot of those mental, emotional situations that we see with people on the sidewalk losing their minds.
I thought about this so many times, Melissa, and just my friend has a company or a nonprofit, Blankets of Hope, and I was like, man, we should just spray all these blankets with permethrin before giving them to the homeless people, because like they're just such a susceptible population. And I don't mean to like negatively portray them, but a lot of times I think of them having more mental imbalances potentially. And I'm like, it's probably like tick-borne illness. That's probably exactly what's happening to these poor people. And they're never going to really have an accurate diagnosis. They're just going to be written off and put away somewhere or
And it's not
whatnot.
just tick-borne, it's vector-borne, because it is coming from bed bugs, right?
Yes,
just so everyone
correct.
out there is listening,
Correct.
you can get Lyme disease from things other than ticks. We know that mosquitoes are rampant with babesia, right? So we know that there are other ways to be infected than by a tick bite. But for the record, everybody, I never had a tick bite. I never saw a rash. None of that was ever, that's why it was never suspected. And I wasn't at the time very much an outdoor person. I had 2 little kids. I was inside with them most of the time.
I'm there with you. No rash for me either. But we also have head hair. So maybe it was on our head and we had a rash and we couldn't see it because we have hair. So who knows? But I'm glad that's a lot of really important things that we've touched on just in the last 5 minutes for people to be aware about. And then as a final question for you, Melissa, could you please tell me, maybe you've touched on some things potentially, and I might be able to fill in the blank, but what would you say is the best thing that's happened to you as a result of getting Lyme and tick-borne illness?
Really getting back to the work that I'm supposed to be doing in the world.
Yeah.
It's hard. I have a lot of clients that are really sick, and I take those cases on personally, and it's my mission to help those people heal. It would be a lot easier to have started a clothing company, which is one of the other things I did, right? Or just some of the other fun. So I had a social media company for a while. But this is the work that God wanted me to do. I stood up on a stage in May in front of 1,500 people and talked about constipation. If you had told me 10 years ago that I would have ever talked about poop in front of anyone, much less 1,500 people, I would have said there's not a chance. So sometimes we don't get to choose the path, whether it's being infected with Lyme disease or being a a healthcare practitioner, right? We find the work we are meant to do. You find the healing that you're meant to have. You just have to keep looking.
Yes. And I feel like so many people that have gone through this are awakened or reconnected or guided into the path that they really need to be. And if that's helpful to somebody listening to this and you're in a really dark space right now, like know that potentially this could be the catalyst that you need to find your true life purpose, and it will all become a lot clearer to you soon. But just keep fighting and keep going forward. It's very important for you to do that because I do think God picks us for a reason. And so just know that and hang in there, and one step at a time, even if it's 1 foot after the next. That used to be my motto because I was so sick. That was all I could really process, was just 1 foot, then the next foot, then the next foot, because it was really hard to even function in that space. But I am with you, Melissa, in that I feel like this is one of the best things ultimately, is that it just gave me such different purpose and clarity with what I needed to be doing with my life. And I do feel that it's God's mission and I'm doing God's work through this. And I'm grateful to know people like you, to have come across you on your platform there at TikTok. Like I'm in awe of you. I listen to your videos. I was just listening to the one you're talking about tick tubes, and I'm like, I gotta get better about that. I know about those. I need to be making those for myself too. Like I have a lot of other things going on board, I promise, over here, but just good reminders, just different ways that we can help to prevent things. And you're just a wealth of knowledge. Your energy, again, is infectious, and your passion to help people. Like I want to cry just thinking, like I've got chill bumps just thinking about the energy and the force that you possess and put forward for this space is just tremendous. So thank you for being you. Thank you for being authentic. Thank you for finding your way back here. Thank you for finding your way back into the light and for shining it bright, because it's vital. Thank you.
Make me cry.
I'm just so happy to know people like you and to know that there's others on this earth that are doing this work, and just so committed to it, because we know what it's like to be in the other side, right? And to be in the dark hole. And it's not, it's not a quality of life. Like you're a zombie, you're a living, breathing zombie. You're a true prisoner to your own body, mind, and soul. And that's awful, because again, we have so much beauty. God gave us such an expansive place here and so much wonder and joy that we really want to be in a good space to be able to appreciate that and enjoy it. So again, I'm just
Absolutely.
very grateful for you.
One day at a time, and one cup of soup at a time, one night of
That's
better
right.
sleep, right? If you're feeling horrible today and you can get outside and get 5 minutes of fresh air and sunlight, like we have to start small and somewhere.
That's right.
Taking care of ourselves like a 3-year-old.
That's right. That's a beautiful thought. And I appreciate you for that. Thank you.